people get hooked on the style and they forget about what they're doing, why they're there. It's sort of like arguing that a tomato is a fruit. Yeah, we'll try putting it in a fruit salad.
So when I'm practicing and turning, even when we're doing this, so I used to have this feeling of kind of like rivers of movement, or that kind of linear, even if it were curved. But now what I'm feeling is, instead of it being just a river, it's kind of, if you had to imagine, those porcelain things they have for hydro. I don't know if they still have them. It's old-fashioned, right? So like
they go on the pole and they insulate the wire from the...
But the old ones were like white, and they were like little, right? And so what I feel is, if I'm moving, is I'm not feeling a line. I'm feeling like ball bearings, like a string of ball bearings. And if you push, and I'm moving, so what I'm feeling now is like ball bearings going all the way down. It's not like just a line. It's like these, like a bunch of marbles inside a marbles inside a line.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, we were talking about last time, was expressing energy or power, expressing power. And we're talking about Tesla coils. So as opposed to having like a whole pile of energy inside that suddenly explodes, which would be problematic because then you have to build up this energy, is the idea of all the energy basically already there, and then it just manifests.
That's it. Yeah. So the power, really good fudging, manifests like an electric shock.
That's what we're talking about. Then is whatever touches it, it grounds it.
Right. So the potential is there. You don't have to do anything. It's already there. It just manifests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as I'm going through the day or whatnot, so I'm thinking, okay, let me feel this. I'm trying to feel like the coils. So I'm trying to feel the inside, just the.
That's right. Yeah. And so you're building this potential constantly. You're really building Jing, accumulating Jing, accumulating that power, which is the alignment, the potential to express. So you're cultivating this thing that when it is called for, it happens.
That's the feeling.
That's right.
that it is always there. It's just like a boat going through the water. It's ready for a wave.
Right.
It's not looking for a wave. It's just floating.
And when the wave comes, the boat moves.
The boat moves.
Yeah. So when the opportunity happens, you don't have to do anything. You've already done it.
That's the feeling. That's the feeling.
Most people, when they're training, we've talked about this before. You can't suddenly relax and be in alignment when you're attacked if you weren't before.
Yeah.
It's already too late.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to build a boat when you're already in the water.
Right. Or when you're sinking.
Yeah. So building a boat underwater is not the most practical way of doing things usually. That video that I posted, which I called rather mischievously, "Techniques Don't Work."
Yes.
Okay. The feedback from that has been generally very, very positive.
Oh, good.
But you get, of course, some people read the title and immediately take offense, and nothing they see in the video is going to change their mind.
Right.
So I was causing some trouble when I called it that. So, my techniques always work, somebody said. I think, wow, always, that's incredible. Which brings up the point, if, as I said, techniques don't work, then why do we have so many techniques? Because we sure do have a lot of them. Right? Most martial arts are technique-based. Very few are not. And even those that we consider method-based arts still have a lot of technique, just they don't emphasize them. So in Tai Chi, the techniques are often seen as incidental. or taken for granted, which is probably another way of doing it, because the techniques came out of a place where people already knew the techniques.
Right.
So you didn't have to teach the techniques as part of the art. The people who were learning Tai Chi or learning Pakwa or learning these things already had a big catalog of technique.
Right.
In my curriculum, we have over 100 throws. There are about 36 that are the core of the curriculum, meaning these are the ones that are likely going to come up. It's like when you're learning a language. You learn a whole bunch of sentences. And some of these sentences are practical and they'll come up in conversation. A lot of the sentences that you learn are not going to come up in conversation. La plume de ma tante est sur le bureau. You know, my aunt's quill is on the desk. You know, that's not going to come up very often. One that comes up in Duolingo a lot when I'm working on the French is vous avez or tu as un joli canard. You have a lovely duck. Right? This is not a practical sentence. Right? It's not going to come up very often. However, learning that sentence teaches you a lot about French and how to apply it beyond talking about somebody's duck. And one of the things that it does, I suppose, if you get used to learning how to say tu as un joli canard, and you learn how to say it probably better than I'm saying it, and you learn what it sounds like, then when somebody says tu as un joli canard, you won't make the mistake of thinking they're talking about a duck. You'll go, that sounds different somehow. You have a lovely... So, don't be a duck. Don't be a canard. So all of these sentences that come up that are not very practical at all, or like the techniques that we learn in martial arts that will never happen. Okay? And many of the sometimes I'll be teaching an application of the form. And, you know, for instance, say the Sun style, you know, single whip idea. You punch with your right hand, and you punch my face. There, that's that, and then strike. Now, I can't do the technique to you because you're doing Tai Chi.
Oh, sorry.
I cannot, I'll just, you have to, you know, the Tai Chi only works against the right lunge punch. Okay? So step forward more, punch of the fist, there we go. Then I go here. Now you can't counter, or else the technique won't work. So there, and then step, and we do that. And we do the technique. And the technique works really well against other people who don't have proper method or structure or alignment. As soon as they have proper method, structure, or alignment, then you have to get through all of that stuff before you can make the technique happen. And by the time you get through all of that stuff, the technique is not going to be the technique you were planning. It has to be something else. So how practical is that technique? About as practical as saying you have a lovely duck. Yeah. so and all of the techniques are like that. But we have over 100 throws. We have, in the curriculum, there's officially over 100 joint locks. This is in my curriculum. Okay. And most martial arts will have something like that. They'll have maybe 25 or 30 throws, 36 throws, or they'll have 20 or 30 joint locks that are really fundamental. This is the sort of elementary school French. It allows you to have a sort of a conversation slowly with somebody. And when you get really good at it, judo has, 86 or 88 80-something throws in judo that are part of the standard canon. And those are the things that are allowed, more or less, within a tournament. And when people are competing in judo, the idea is to do one of those and do it in a clear way that you score a full, clear point, or a couple of half points. I don't think they do Koka judo anymore, which is too bad, because Koka judo was great for Tai Chi people. Koka judo means the other guy basically throws themselves. They go to do a throw and they stumble, and so you get a point because they tried to do something, it didn't work, they fell down. As I understand it, that's what Koka judo is. So, I did a judo competition, and I kept throwing Koka, and it was annoying. People don't want to see Koka judo. I don't even know if they do it anymore. If that even counts as those meaningless points that really didn't count for anything, but that showed you had slightly more skill than the other guy, then they would put those in. So, okay, good, we'll have to count those now that everything else is tied. But they wouldn't be, as I understand it, wouldn't be included in the score unless everything else was equal. And they'd try to find all kinds of excuses not to have to use those. So, Koka judo is what happens when you have good method, but you have no technique.
Okay.
You don't know how to finish it. Okay, you don't, so you're really good, you're stable, you're balanced, you're strong, maybe you have good attributes, but you clearly don't know how to do a proper chow, proper throw. You know, you've never been able to get your hips in there to do the throw, or you've never, yeah. So with martial arts training, we learn, you know, S-bend lock, or we learn, you know, all of these other joint locks or techniques or throws. In the form, we'll learn a movement, and then say, well, okay, single whip, high pat, no, don't move. Okay, I'm going to do this technique. Single whip, see, that's Tai Chi, you're countering there. So from here, high pat on horse. But see, that technique doesn't work on you because you have method and structure, so the technique doesn't work. And so in order for me to get to the technique, I have to navigate all of the rest of the stuff to get to the point where the technique happens. So when people say, oh, my technique always works, well, that's probably because you're training against people who are either cooperative or not nearly as good as you. And the opportunities are there. Now, once you practice a lot of techniques, then you start to see the opportunities, you also see the vulnerabilities. So you see the opportunity to get the other person, but you also see the opportunity where the other person can get you. And then your mindset starts to change. And instead of going for the technique, now it's not like, you know, when you're playing chess, a lot of people think the idea is to get the king. But really, the game is to control the board. You control the board, you control the players, and then gradually you work your way to that. You don't just go, oh, well, if I move my queen there, I can get the king. But then you forget, okay, there are all these other things involved. So you have technique, but then you have tactics, and then you have strategy, and all of these things that make the technique, the very end of the fight, a very incidental part of the martial art. So we learn all of these techniques just so that we can see how the fight ends.
Right.
And then we tell stories. If he does this, I do this, I go there, and that's it. So you're telling a story, but it's not a free-flowing conversation. So the techniques are great in basically showing you what your goal is and how all the different ways that the thing could end. And if you know 120 throws and 110 joint locks, and you know all of the pressure point strikes and all of the ways that a person can lose consciousness and all of the ways that you can get a person off balance. And we only have, in my system, we only have about 12 things we do on the ground. Right? It's not a ground fighting school. If people want to do ground fighting, we bring somebody else in or we go somewhere else and we do the grappling and the ground fighting there, because there are a lot of people who are way better at it than I am. And plus, ground fighting, the ground has such good endurance that I just don't like to go down there. Especially as you get older, the ground fighting is a lot about conditioning unless you have a really extraordinary high level of skill. So now we get into this idea of Tai Chi forms. You have a form, and so I do this. What's the martial application of this move? So we say, well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be that. And when I'm teaching a technique, I say, so this is the application. And then after I say, you know, could happen. Right? Whenever you do an application, you say, oh, that's possible, that could happen. The art then is learning how to navigate all of the possibilities. And the only way to do that is to not think about all of the possibilities. You have to break it down to some very basic core principles until ultimately, we have basic shapes, basic ways that the person can go to the ground, basic ways that you can control the joints. If I have a thumb and
Just
See,
the thought of
just
it.
the thought of it, right?
Yeah.
So if I have the thumb, I won't apply pressure because you need your hands to live. So if I do this, it's not just the technique. It's how does it manipulate and control you?
Yeah.
How does it control your mind, your emotions, your thoughts, and how does that interact with the physical relationship between your need to exact some kind of revenge on me or attack me? If I go to the finger, then I can apply similar principles with a completely different lock, and I can go to the same thing and I think about the emotional effect that it's having on you, not just if I do this and bend this backwards, that's going to happen. When we're practicing forms, we'll sometimes say, well, what's the martial application of this move? And then we'll practice that in order to understand a particular technique. But that's only one of many martial applications. And it's not like it's a martial application of step in and single whip or do that. And so you can't even allow the technique to happen. Your method and structure is so natural and integrated.
I learned it from Guy,
Yeah, weirdo. So from here, doing technique with you, I would have to teach you how to cooperate. Right. We would have to go through that whole process again of saying, okay, right lunge punch, and then the person steps in and does the throw. And for people who don't have that foundation, that structure, you can do that. If somebody throws a punch at you and they don't have any of that call it advanced training, that method training, then they're going to throw a punch and all they're thinking about is throwing a punch until they're done. And then they're going to come up with something else. Right? They're not going to throw a punch, see the intent change, and then change the structure.
Right.
So you can say something to somebody in a particular language and it will mean one thing to you and it will mean something completely different to them. It'll have nuance.
So what I feel that I've learned from you, perhaps the main thing is, so if we're doing anything, so to me it feels like, once there's an engagement, it's like being in a salad, right? And the salad is being tossed.
Yes.
And if you're attached to being the cucumber or the tomato, you're done. But if you're just totally, if you don't care what you are, now I'm lettuce, now I'm a cucumber.
That's right.
And then you just tossed.
Yeah.
And because you can't, there are just too many vegetables in there. You can't keep track of them all. Or here comes an onion. No.
Yeah.
Or you can't do that. So I feel the main thing that I've learned is that not to start another argument, but there are no techniques. Because if you say the technique, I won't do anything bad. If you say the technique is the final moment, and the structure of the technique is how you get to that place, then you have to assume that everything is going to be, all the planets are going to be in alignment from here to there.
Right.
And if things are going like this, they're not going to be. It is just like tossing a salad.
Yeah. No plan survives contact with the enemy,
Yeah.
and no technique survives from beginning to end.
Yeah, so when I'm practicing Tai Chi, I'm not thinking, oh, this is where I push. I'm just thinking, I'm moving through space. That's all. I'm moving. These are different ways of moving through space. And I'm trying to feel what's happening inside me as I move through space. So if you punch or do anything, then I want to have that same, like I want all those little marbles to be doing it. I don't want to be stuck here. I want to just just let the marbles move.
Right.
And as they move, whatever happens, because I can't make a plan. Because I don't know what you're going to do. I can't say, okay, you stand there. No, not quite there. Over there a little. Okay, now I can, right? So that's what I feel I've learned. And that's what I feel is the real heart of what happens. So I mean, the techniques are important, I think, because if you train this, you're training your shoulder. You're making your shoulder loose. Your shoulder can move this way if it has to, or like that. But this can't be the end. You just want to have a loose shoulder. So you go like this, you go like this, you go like this, whatever you want to do. But it's being, I guess I'm just repeating myself, it's willing to just be the salad, be tossed.
People argue about technique. Is this technique? You're not fighting with Tai Chi. That's just Sui Jiao. What, because they did a Sui Jiao technique? Tai Chi has Sui Jiao techniques in it. Well, that was Judo. Well, yeah, okay, but it's a technique. You can argue about whether the technique belongs in this style or that style, and it's completely irrelevant. I want to see somebody fight using Tai Chi. Well, you'll never see anybody fight using Tai Chi. You won't see the Tai Chi. Right? You can see better Tai Chi in some karate masters than you'll see in Tai Chi. A lot of the Tai Chi people that think they're doing Tai Chi, they're so hooked on technique and style and so on that they're not practicing an art anymore. If you're practicing a style, you're not practicing an art. You're just stuck in the pedagogy.
Right.
The MMA fighter who fought against the so-called Tai Chi master, and the Tai Chi master had probably never seen a punch before. They both had it coming. The MMA guy was a real jerk about it, and the Tai Chi guy was as much a jerk or an idiot about it. And so there was fallout on both sides. But people get hooked on the style and they forget about what they're doing, why they're there. It's sort of like arguing that a tomato is a fruit. Yeah, we'll try putting it in a fruit salad. It's what is appropriate for the moment. It's not about the style.
Right.
Okay, I can say I do Tai Chi. Well, I'm going to fight with Tai Chi. Yeah, but when when the opportunity is there to punch, I'm just going to punch. And whether it's a good punch or a bad punch, if it's the best thing to do at that moment, I'm going to do it. Whether it's a good Tai Chi punch or has good fudging.
So I would say that that's. I'm not saying that's what you taught, but I'm saying that's what I learned. is that there's an appropriateness in each moment, and that's all that counts.
Right.
Because I can do the most beautiful of this, but if I get hit in the face, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I guess that. Just like that each moment has its moment.
Wow. Hey, far out, dude. Man, that's wild.